Caleb Morrison's hands shook as he pressed his fingers against the woman's throat, searching for a pulse he wasn't sure existed. Snow had frozen in her auburn hair like a death shroud. Her lips were blue. In her rigid fingers, she clutched a piece of paper so tightly he'd have to break her hand to get it free. "Pa, is she dead?" Lucas whispered from the wagon. The pulse fluttered beneath Caleb's fingertips, weak, irregular, but there. "Not yet," he said, "but she's close." Behind them, in the white fury of the blizzard, men's voices echoed. They were hunting her. Before we begin this story of second chances and survival, I invite you to subscribe to our channel and stay with us until the very end. Comment below with your city or country so I can see how far this story travels across the world. Now let's continue. The Wyoming Territory. Winter of 1883. Didn't ask permission before it killed. It simply took horses' cattle, foolish men who thought they could outrun a blizzard. Caleb Morrison knew better than most. He'd buried his wife in a winter storm 3 years prior, the ground so frozen they'd had to wait until spring thaw to dig deep enough for a proper grave. He didn't expect to find a woman dying in the snow 2 miles from his property line. "Pa, what's that?" Lucas pointed from the wagon bed, his 9-year-old eyes sharper than Caleb's weather-worn gaze. At first, Caleb thought it was a deer carcass, dark shape against white snow not moving. Then he saw the fabric blue wool, torn and muddy. A dress. "Stay in the wagon," he commanded, his cavalry training surfacing in his voice. Lucas obeyed instantly. The boy had learned early that tone meant danger. Caleb dismounted, his scarred left hand clumsy on the rifle he pulled from the saddle holster. Bitter Creek had seen its share of ambushes. A woman in the snow could be bait. But as he approached, he saw the truth. No ambush, just death creeping in on frozen feet. She lay face down, one arm stretched forward as if she'd been crawling. The other clutched something against her chest. Her dress was summer weight, completely inadequate for the January cold. No coat, no gloves. Her boots were thin-soled town shoes already splitting at the seams. "Ma'am." His voice came out rougher than intended. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Nothing. He knelt, his knees cracking in protest. The cold had already seeped through his wool pants. How long had she been out here? An hour. 2. That's when he pressed his fingers to her throat and felt the impossible. She was still alive. "Lucas, get the blankets. All of them. Now." His son scrambled to obey while Caleb carefully turned the woman over. Her face was pale as death lips tinged blue. But it was her eyes that stopped him. They flickered open for just a moment, unfocused and glazed with hypothermia. "Please," she whispered the word barely audible. "Mercy." Then her eyes rolled back and she went limp. "Christ," Caleb muttered, then immediately regretted the curse. Lucas was listening. The boy heard everything, remembered. Everything, spoke almost nothing. "Is she gonna die like Ma?" Lucas asked, his voice flat, emotionless. That dead tone worried Caleb more than any crying would have. "Not if I can help it." Caleb wrapped her in every blanket they had, lifting her as gently as his scarred hand would allow. She weighed next to nothing. When had she last eaten? Get back in the wagon. We're going home. But the supplies? Supplies can wait. She can't. That's when he noticed what she'd been clutching. A paper, official looking, with a red wax seal. He couldn't read it in the blowing snow, but he tucked it inside his coat, along with the woman's frozen hand. The ride back to his ranch took 20 minutes that felt like 20 hours. The wind howled like a living thing trying to rip them all from the wagon. Lucas huddled in the corner watching the woman with the wariness of a coyote watching a trap. "What's her name?" the boy finally asked. "Don't know yet." "Where'd she come from?" "Don't know that either." "Why was she?" "Lucas." Caleb's voice carried a warning. "Save your questions for after I know if she'll live to answer them." The boy fell silent again. When they finally reached the ranch house, Caleb kicked the door open with more force than necessary. The warmth inside hit him like a fist. Good. She needed heat, but not too fast. Too fast, and her heart would give out. "Molly," he called. "Molly, where are you?" His 6-year-old daughter peeked out from behind the stove, her blonde hair tangled as always. She hadn't let anyone brush it since Catherine died. When she saw her father carrying a stranger, her eyes went wide, and she pressed herself harder against the wall. "It's all right, baby girl. She's hurt. I need you to be brave." Molly shook her head violently, her whole body trembling. Words had become difficult for her after Catherine's death. Some days she managed a few, most days nothing. "Lucas, get your sister upstairs. Keep her there until I say otherwise." For once, Lucas didn't argue. He took Molly's hand. She only tolerated touch from him and led her to the loft ladder. Caleb heard their footsteps overhead as he laid the woman on the floor near the stove. Not the bed. Not yet. Catherine's bed remained untouched, and bringing another woman there felt like a betrayal his hands wouldn't make. He worked quickly, his cavalry medical training coming back in fragments. Remove wet clothes. Check for frostbite. Warm the core first, extremities later. Her fingers were white at the tips, frostbite definitely. Maybe she'd lose a finger or two, but her pulse was still there, stronger now in the warmth. Her dress came off in pieces, the fabric frozen and fragile. Underneath, she wore a thin chemise and not much else. No wonder she'd nearly died. He wrapped her in dry blankets, then heated water for broth. That's when he finally looked at the paper she'd been clutching. Certificate of Marriage. Samuel Thorne and Abigail Clark. October 14, 1881. Beside it, another document. Property deed. Thorne Mercantile, Main Street. Bitter Creek, Wyoming Territory. And a third, this one crumpled and torn. Notice of guardianship claim. Warren Thorne petitioner. Abigail Thorne Ward. Understanding hit him like a cavalry charge. This was Samuel Thorne's widow. Samuel, the drunk who'd frozen to death last spring after passing out behind the saloon. Samuel, whose brother Warren now owned half of Bitter Creek and wanted the other half. And this woman, Abigail, held the deed to property Warren needed for the railroad. "Pa!" Lucas called down from the loft. "There's riders coming, 3 of them." Caleb moved to the window. Through the snow, he could make out shapes, big men on bigger horses, pushing through the storm like they had no fear of it. Warren Thorne rode in the lead. The sheriff flanked him on one side, Deputy Pike on the other. They'd been chasing her. Caleb looked back at the woman Abigail unconscious on his floor. She'd crawled through a blizzard rather than let Warren catch her. That told him everything he needed to know about Warren's intentions. The riders pulled up outside. Heavy boots on the porch. A fist pounded the door. "Morrison, open up official business." Caleb glanced at Abigail one more time. Her auburn hair had started to dry, curling slightly at the edges. Her face, no longer blue with cold, showed freckles across her nose. She looked younger than he'd thought. 28, maybe 30? She'd whispered mercy. He'd given it once today. Now he'd have to give it again in a different way. Caleb opened the door just wide enough to show his face and the barrel of his rifle. "Evening, Warren. Hell of a storm to be riding in." Warren Thorne was a big man, not tall, but wide, with the kind of bulk that came from years of heavy eating and light working. His face was red from cold and anger, his eyes small and mean beneath his expensive hat. "Got a fugitive, Morrison. Woman named Abigail Thorne. She ran from my custody about 2 hours ago. You seen her?" "Why would she be running from you?" Caleb kept his voice neutral. "Thought she was your sister-in-law." "She's unwell," Warren said, his tone dripping with false concern. "Grief from Samuel's death has affected her mind. I've got legal guardianship. She needs protection." "From what?" "From herself." Warren's patience was thinning. "Now, have you seen her or not?" Caleb let the silence stretch. Behind Warren, Sheriff Dawson shifted uncomfortably. Dawson was a decent enough man when Warren's money wasn't involved. Today, clearly, the money was involved. Saw tracks about a mile back, Caleb said finally. Headed east toward the river pass. But in this storm, she'd never make it. You're looking for a corpse, not a fugitive. Warren's face darkened. You better not be lying to me, Morrison. Why would I lie? Caleb raised an eyebrow. Woman I never met running from family business that ain't mine. Got no stake in any of it. Your property line is the closest shelter from town. Deputy Pike spoke up. He was young, stupid, and loyal to Warren's payroll. If she was running, she'd come here. Then search the place. Caleb stepped back, opening the door wider. But keep your boots clean. Got children sleeping upstairs, and if you wake them, we'll have words. That was the gamble. Let them in, prove he had nothing to hide, or refuse and confirm their suspicions. Warren dismounted heavily. His boots thundered on the porch as he pushed past Caleb into the warmth of the cabin. His eyes swept the main room, the table with its half-eaten supper, the stove with its crackling fire, the rocking chair where Catherine used to nurse Molly. His gaze lingered on the closed door to the bedroom, then moved to the blanket-wrapped bundle near the stove. What's that? Feed sacks, Caleb said without hesitation. Keeping them dry for the livestock. Warren walked toward it. Caleb's hand tightened on his rifle. Warren, Sheriff Dawson said quietly from the doorway. Man's got his kids here. Let's check the barn and move on. For a long moment, Warren stared at the blankets. Caleb could see the calculation in his eyes. Was it worth calling the bluff? Then Warren turned away. Fine. But if I find out you're hiding her, Morrison, you'll regret it. I've got the law on my side. Law says a lot of things, Caleb replied. Most of which you've been bending since you bought that territorial judgeship for your pocket judge. Warren's face flushed purple. Careful, Morrison. You're a widower with 2 kids. Be a shame if something happened to your property. Lots of accidents in winter. The threat hung in the air, naked and ugly. Get out, Caleb said quietly. Dangerously. Now. Sheriff Dawson put a hand on Warren's arm. Come on. Storm's getting worse. We'll check the river pass like Morrison said. Warren left, but his parting look promised this wasn't over. Caleb waited until the riders disappeared into the white fury before closing the door. His hands were shaking not from cold, but from rage. Men like Warren Thorne had always existed. During the war, they'd been the officers who sent good men to die while they stayed safe behind the lines. After the war, they'd been the carpetbaggers who bought up land for pennies while farmers starved. He'd learned to recognize them, and he'd learned that standing up to them meant risking everything. Lucas stood at the top of the ladder, his face pale. Why'd you lie? Caleb looked at his son, 9 years old, and already too knowing, too careful. The boy had learned not to trust the world. How could Caleb teach him otherwise? Because she asked for mercy, Caleb said simply. And she was running from men who wanted to hurt her. But now they'll come back, when they find out. Maybe. But maybe by then she'll be able to tell us her side of the story. Lucas absorbed this, his face serious. Ma used to say mercy was important, that it mattered more than rules. Catherine had said that. She'd lived it too. It was part of why Caleb had loved her. Your ma was right. What if she dies anyway? The lady? Then I'll bury her proper. But I won't bury her knowing I handed her over to Warren Thorne. Lucas nodded slowly, then climbed back up to check on Molly. Caleb returned to Abigail's side. Her color had improved, face now pink instead of death pale. Her breathing was deeper, more regular. She'd lived through the night most likely. He reheated the broth, lifting her head carefully to spoon small sips between her lips. She swallowed reflexively, not waking. Don't know who you are, he murmured, or what you did to make Warren Thorne chase you through a blizzard. But you're safe tonight. Tomorrow, we'll figure out the rest. Outside, the storm howled its fury. Inside, the fire crackled, and the woman slept unaware that she'd just cost Caleb Morrison his peace of mind, and possibly his safety. But as he sat beside her through the long night keeping watch, he found he didn't regret the choice. Catherine would have done the same. Hours passed. The storm intensified until the whole cabin shook with wind. Caleb fed the fire, checked on the children, and returned again and again to the woman on his floor. Near midnight, her eyes finally opened. She stared at the ceiling for a long moment, confusion clouding her green eyes. Then, awareness crept in of the warmth, the blankets, the unfamiliar surroundings. Her gaze found Caleb sitting in the shadows near the stove. "You," she said, her voice hoarse. "You saved me." "Found you in the snow. Didn't seem right to leave you there." She tried to sit up, gasped with pain, and fell back. "My hands. Frostbite. Not too bad. You'll keep all your fingers, I think. Few more hours out there, though, and you wouldn't have." Tears gathered in her eyes. Not from pain, Caleb thought, but from something deeper. "They were chasing me," she whispered. "Warren and his men. Did they come here?" "They came. I sent them east." Understanding dawned on her face, followed by fear. "Then you lied to the sheriff. You lied for me." "Seemed like the thing to do. But you don't even know me. Don't know why I was running." "Don't need to. Woman runs from Warren Thorne. She's got good reason." Abigail stared at him, searching his face for something. "I'm Abigail Thorne, Samuel's widow." "Figured as much. Found the marriage certificate in your hand." "Then you know Warren's trying to take my land, the store property." "Suspected." She struggled to sit up again. This time Caleb helped her, propping her against the wall. She winced, but didn't cry out. "He filed guardianship papers," she said quickly, words tumbling out like she'd been holding them too long. "Claiming I'm mentally unfit to manage my own affairs. Samuel died 8 months ago, and Warren's been circling ever since. The railroad's coming through Bitter Creek, and my property is right where they want to build the station. Warren needs that land. So he's taking it legal-like." "There's nothing legal about it. He bribed Judge Morrison to sign the guardianship order. Once I'm his ward, he controls everything: my property, my money, my freedom. He'll put me in an asylum if I resist." Caleb had heard of such things. Women declared insane by cooperative doctors locked away, while male relatives stole their inheritance. It was legal. That didn't make it right. "Why not fight it in court?" Abigail laughed, but there was no humor in it. "With what money Warren owns the bank, he's already frozen my accounts. I went to the territorial marshal 2 weeks ago, but Warren has connections there too. No one will help me." "So you ran." "I ran. Through a blizzard with nothing but the clothes on my back and my marriage certificate. Stupid, I know. But I'd rather die free in the snow than live as Warren's prisoner." The conviction in her voice stirred something in Caleb's chest. Catherine had been like that, fierce in her own quiet way. Stubborn as a mule when she believed in something. "You can't go back to town," he said. "Warren knows you're alive now. He'll be watching every road." "I know." Abigail's shoulders slumped. "I don't know what to do. I don't have money for a stage ticket. Can't travel in this storm anyway. And even if I could, where would I go? Warren's connections reach all through the territory." Caleb was quiet for a long moment, thinking. His life had been simple since Catherine died. Take care of the kids, work the ranch, stay away from trouble. But trouble had arrived on his doorstep anyway, frozen and desperate. "You could stay here," he heard himself say. "Temporarily. Until the storm breaks and we figure something out." Abigail's eyes widened. "I can't ask that of you. You've already risked enough by lying to the sheriff." "Didn't ask. I'm offering. But your children will mind their manners and treat a guest with respect." "Mr. Morrison." She said his name carefully, like she was testing unfamiliar ground. "If Warren finds out I'm here, he'll come after you. He'll use every legal trick he knows to take your land, hurt your children, destroy everything you've built. I've seen what he does to people who cross him. Then we'll make sure he doesn't find out. How? This is Wyoming territory, not the big city. Everyone knows everyone's business. Caleb leaned forward, his scarred hand resting on his knee. Tell me something. You got any skills? Anything useful? Abigail blinked at the sudden change in direction. I was a school teacher before I married Samuel. I can read, write, cipher. I know some medicinal herbs. I can cook, sew, manage accounts. Good. Then here's what we tell folks. You're my new housekeeper. Hired you from back east through a church advertisement. You arrived today just before the storm hit. No one will believe that. Why not happens all the time? Widowers need help with children. Churches place women in service positions. It's respectable. But I have no references, no luggage, no lost in transit, common enough with winter travel. Abigail stared at him, hope and disbelief warring on her face. You'd do that lie to the whole town. Already lied to the sheriff. Might as well commit to it. But Warren will challenge it. He'll say I'm his ward, that you're hiding me illegally. Let him try. Long as you're employed and willing, guardianship gets complicated. Gives us time to find another solution. There is no other solution, Abigail said bitterly. Warren owns this territory. Maybe, but he doesn't own me. The words hung between them, a promise and a challenge both. Abigail studied him, really looked at him for the first time. Saw the scars on his hand, the lines around his eyes, the gray threading through his dark blonde hair. Saw a man who'd known loss and chosen to help anyway. Why? She whispered. Why would you risk everything for a stranger? Caleb thought about that. About Catherine dying while he was away. About coming home to find her gone and the children shattered. About 3 years of numbness and whiskey and trying to figure out how to be both mother and father to kids who needed more than he knew how to give. About finding a woman in the snow who'd chosen death over surrender. Because mercy matters, he said finally. And because I got a little girl upstairs who's forgotten how to talk and a boy who's forgotten how to feel. They need to see that standing up for what's right is worth the cost, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Abigail's eyes filled with tears again. I don't even know your first name. Caleb? Caleb. She tested the name, then offered her hand. Thank you, Caleb Morrison. I'll work hard. I'll earn my keep. And I'll leave as soon as it's safe. He shook her hand carefully, mindful of her frostbitten fingers. Deal. Now get some sleep. Tomorrow I'll introduce you to Lucas and Molly. Fair warning, they're not easy. Grief's made them hard. I understand grief, Abigail said softly. Maybe that's something we can share. She lay back down, exhaustion pulling her under. Within minutes her breathing evened out into sleep. Caleb sat watch through the rest of the night rifle across his lap, listening to the storm rage outside. Somewhere out there, Warren Thorne was planning his next move. Tomorrow would bring new problems, new dangers. But tonight, he'd given mercy to someone who needed it. That had to count for something. As dawn broke gray and cold, the storm finally began to ease. Caleb stood, stretched his aching back, and went to wake the children. Time to tell Lucas and Molly they had a house guest, and time to teach them what their mother would have wanted them to learn, that some battles chose you, whether you wanted them or not. And when they did, you fought, not because victory was certain, but because surrender wasn't an option. Lucas was already awake when Caleb climbed the loft ladder. The boy sat by the small window, watching the last of the storm clouds break apart over the eastern ridge. He didn't turn around. She's still here, Lucas said. Not a question. Yes. And she's staying. For a while. Now Lucas turned his face unreadable. You told those men she wasn't here. That makes you a liar. The word hit harder than Caleb expected. Yes, it does. Ma said lying was a sin. Your ma was right about most things. Caleb sat on the edge of Lucas's narrow bed. But she also said mercy mattered more than rules. Remember? Lucas's jaw tightened. He had Catherine's stubborn chin. Mercy for strangers, not for us. What do you mean? I mean you brought a stranger into our house, lied to the sheriff for her, put us in danger, and you didn't even ask if we wanted her here. The accusation stung because it was true. Caleb had made the choice alone, just like he'd made every choice alone since Catherine died. The boy had a right to his anger. You're right, I should have asked. But son, she would have died? People die all the time. Lucas's voice cracked. Ma died. You didn't save her. There it was, the wound that wouldn't heal. The accusation Lucas had never spoken aloud until now. No, Caleb said quietly. I didn't. So why her? Why save a stranger when you couldn't save Ma? Caleb reached for his son, but Lucas jerked away. The rejection hurt worse than any bullet wound Caleb had taken during the war. Because I got a second chance, Caleb said finally. To do what I couldn't do before. To be there when someone needed help. Maybe it doesn't make sense to you. Maybe it's selfish. But I couldn't let her die, Lucas. Not when I could stop it. Lucas stared at him, with eyes too old for 9 years. What if Warren comes back? What if he hurts Molly because of this stranger? I won't let that happen. You can't promise that. You couldn't promise Ma would be okay. You can't promise anything. The boy was right. Caleb couldn't promise. Life had taught him that promises meant nothing against death and chance, and the cruelty of winter storms. No, he admitted. I can't, but I can try, and I can teach you that trying matters even when you're scared, especially when you're scared. Lucas looked away, his small hands clenched into fists. I don't want to meet her. Too bad. She's staying and you'll be civil. I hate you. The words should have hurt. Instead, Caleb felt something like relief. Hate was better than the empty silence Lucas usually offered. Hate meant the boy could still feel something. That's your right, Caleb said. But you'll still do your chores and mind your manners. Understand? Lucas didn't answer. Understand. Yes, sir. Caleb moved to Molly's corner. His daughter had burrowed under every blanket she owned, creating a nest she rarely left anymore. Only her blonde hair showed at the top. Baby girl, he said softly. Time to wake up. She didn't move. Molly, I need you to listen. We have a guest. A lady who's going to be staying with us for a while. Her name is Miss Abigail. From inside the blankets came a small whimper. Fear. She's not going to hurt you. She's nice. She needs our help. The whimpering grew louder. Molly started rocking the way she did when the night terrors came. It's all right. No. The word came muffled but clear. No, no, no. Lucas crossed the room and knelt beside his sister's nest. Molly, it's okay. I'm here. Molly's hand emerged from the blankets, grabbing her brother's shirt. Lucas looked up at Caleb, his face twisted with something between accusation and plea. See what you did, he whispered. Caleb climbed back down the ladder, his chest tight. This was going to be harder than he'd thought. Abigail was awake, sitting up with blankets wrapped around her shoulders. She'd braided her auburn hair, somehow making herself look more respectable. Her green eyes followed him as he crossed to the stove. I heard, she said quietly. They're scared. They have reason to be. I'm a stranger who appeared out of nowhere. Their father lied to the law because of me, and now you're asking them to accept my presence in their home, in their space, near their mother's things. She paused. I wouldn't trust me either. Caleb poured coffee, his scarred hand clumsy with the pot. Give them time. Time might be something we don't have. Warren won't stop looking. Warren thinks you headed east. Storm covered your tracks. We got a few days, maybe a week. And then we deal with it. Abigail stood testing her legs. She swayed but caught herself. I need to earn my place here. Those children need to see I'm useful, not just another burden. You nearly froze to death yesterday. You should rest. Rest is a luxury I can't afford." Her voice carried steel beneath the weakness. "Your son is right to hate me. I'm a danger to your family. The only way to change that is to prove I'm worth the risk." Before Caleb could argue, footsteps on the ladder announced Lucas's descent. The boy's face was carefully blank as he reached the bottom rung. He didn't look at Abigail. "Molly won't come down. She wants me to bring her breakfast up there." "She needs to come down and eat at the table," Caleb started. "Let her eat where she feels safe," Abigail interrupted. "There's no shame in needing space when the world feels too big." Lucas's eyes flicked to her, surprised. "You don't know anything about my sister." "No, but I know about being scared, about needing a safe place when everything else is falling apart." "She's not scared. She's just—" Lucas stopped, unable to finish the lie. "She's terrified," Abigail said gently. "Of me. Of change. Of losing what little control she has left. I understand that." Lucas's jaw worked. "If you understand it, why don't you just leave?" "Because your father asked me to stay. And because running away from fear doesn't make it smaller. It just means you're alone with it." The boy had no answer for that. He grabbed a plate and started up the ladder without another word. Caleb waited until Lucas was out of earshot. "He's not usually this hostile." "Yes, he is. He's just usually hostile silently." Abigail moved to the stove, wincing with each step. "Your son is protecting his sister and his father the only way he knows how. By pushing away anything that might hurt them. You a mind reader. I'm a woman who lost everything and had to figure out how to survive people who wanted to take what little I had left. You learn to read threats quickly and to recognize when someone's just scared." She reached for a pan, but Caleb caught her wrist. "You're not cooking on frostbitten hands." "Then what use am I?" "You're a person who nearly died. That buys you a day of uselessness." "No." Abigail pulled her hand free. "That buys me more suspicion from your son and more terror from your daughter. I need to be useful, now." Her determination reminded him so sharply of Catherine that Caleb had to look away. Catherine had been the same way after a difficult birth, refusing to rest, insisting on proving she could still manage the household. It had been stubborn and foolish, and he'd loved her for it. "Fine, but you're supervising, not doing. Tell me what to cook, and I'll do the work." They fell into an awkward dance, Abigail giving instructions, Caleb following them with the clumsiness of a man who'd been cooking for children rather than adults. She corrected his measurements, suggested herbs from the small garden box by the window, showed him how to make biscuits that didn't taste like saddle leather. "Where'd you learn to cook like this?" he asked. "My mother ran a boarding house in Boston. I grew up cooking for 20 people at a time." Her hands moved unconsciously the way skilled people's hands did when remembering long-practiced motions. "After she died, I took over. That's where I met Samuel. He was staying there while he set up his mercantile here." "He bring you west?" "I brought myself west. Samuel just gave me a reason." She paused. "He was kind. That was enough for me then. But not now. Now I know that kindness without strength is just pretty words. Samuel was kind to everyone, which meant he was loyal to no one. Warren pushed him around his whole life. That's part of why Samuel drank. He couldn't stand up to his brother, so he drowned his guilt instead." The bitterness in her voice ran deep. Caleb recognized it. He'd felt the same about officers during the war who sent men to die rather than admit a strategy was flawed. Warren, the reason Samuel ended up frozen behind the saloon. Warren's the reason Samuel was at the saloon at all. They'd had a fight about the property. Warren wanted Samuel to sell to the railroad. Samuel refused. It was the one time he stood up to his brother. Warren told him he was a disappointment, that their parents would be ashamed, that he'd never amount to anything. Abigail's voice went flat. Samuel walked out and drank himself unconscious. By the time anyone found him, His heart had given out from the cold. And Warren blamed you. Warren blamed me for existing, for marrying his brother, for being alive when Samuel wasn't. The guardianship claim is just his way of finishing what he started, erasing me completely and taking what he wants. Lucas appeared at the top of the ladder. Molly ate 3 bites and went back to sleep. That's good, Abigail said before Caleb could criticize. 3 bites is better than none. Tomorrow, maybe she'll eat 4. Lucas descended slowly, studying Abigail with the wariness of a wild animal checking for traps. How would you know? Because I stopped eating for 2 weeks after Samuel died. Couldn't taste anything. Couldn't see the point. But my boarding house neighbor kept bringing me soup. She'd sit outside my door and talk about nothing, her garden, her cat, the weather. She never asked me to eat, just left the soup there. Abigail met Lucas's eyes. On day 15, I drank half a cup. On day 20, I finished a whole bowl. Small steps. That's all healing is. Small steps forward when everything in you wants to run backward. Lucas stared at her for a long moment. Then, without a word, he sat at the table. Caleb brought breakfast over eggs, bacon biscuits that actually looked edible. They ate in silence, but it was a different kind of silence. Not hostile, just careful. They were halfway through when hoofbeats sounded outside. Caleb's hand went to his rifle. Lucas froze fork halfway to his mouth. Abigail's face went pale. Upstairs, Caleb ordered. Both of you. Now. Pa. Now, Lucas. The boy grabbed his sister's plate and ran up the ladder. Abigail stood, but Caleb pushed her back down. Stay put. You're the new housekeeper, remember? Nothing suspicious about a housekeeper having breakfast. Caleb. Trust me. He opened the door before whoever it was could knock. Sheriff Dawson stood on the porch alone this time. His face was tired, apologetic. Morning, Morrison. Sheriff. Caleb didn't lower the rifle. Little early for a social call. This ain't social. Dawson shifted his weight, uncomfortable. Got questions about yesterday. Warren's raising hell claiming you're hiding his ward. Told you yesterday. Haven't seen her. Yeah, you did. But your tracks told a different story. Found marks in the snow about a mile from here. Wagon stopped. Someone got lifted up tracks leading back to your place. Caleb's pulse quickened, but his face stayed calm. Found a woman in the snow. That's true. But it wasn't Abigail Thorne. No. No. Name's Abigail Clark. My new housekeeper from back east. She arrived yesterday just before the storm hit. Stage driver was an idiot and left her at the crossroads instead of bringing her to the house. Woman nearly froze walking here. Dawson's eyebrows rose. That's mighty convenient. You telling me it's illegal to hire help now? Course not. But Warren's gonna want proof. Got any papers on this housekeeper? Lost in transit. Common enough. References. Church placement service in Philadelphia. Can send a wire if you want, but it'll take a week to get confirmation. Dawson rubbed his face, looking older than his 40-odd years. Morrison, if you're lying to me, come in and meet her yourself. See if she looks like a woman on the run or a woman who just started a new job. The invitation surprised Dawson. Good. Innocent men invited inspection. Guilty men refused it. The sheriff followed Caleb inside. Abigail stood when they entered, her posture straight, despite the pain she must have been feeling. She'd wrapped herself in one of Catherine's old shawls, modest, respectable. Sheriff, she said with a slight nod. Ma'am? Dawson studied her face, looking for something. Got a few questions if you don't mind. Of course. What's your full name? Abigail Clark. The lie came smooth as butter. She'd dropped the Thorne name easily. Where you from? Philadelphia most recently. Boston before that. And you came all the way to Wyoming territory to keep house for a widower. The church placement service offered several positions. Mr. Morrison's letter was the most honest. She met Dawson's eyes without flinching. He told me straight that his children were struggling with grief and that the work would be hard. I appreciated his candor. Why not stay east? Plenty of families need help there. Too many memories. My husband died a year ago. Boston stopped feeling like home. It was close enough to the truth to be believable. Dawson's expression softened slightly. Your husband have a name. Samuel Clark. Worked at a textile mill. Cholera took him. Caleb watched her lie with growing admiration. She'd changed just enough details to create a different person while keeping the emotional truth intact. The grief in her voice was real. That made everything else convincing. Got any family back east? No, sir. Parents are gone. No siblings. That's part of why I wanted a fresh start somewhere new. Dawson pulled out a folded paper from his coat. Warren gave me this. It's a photograph of his sister-in-law, taken on her wedding day. He held it out. Abigail took it with steady hands, looked at it, and passed it back. She's pretty, but I'm afraid I don't see the resemblance. It was a gamble. The photograph was 3 years old, and people changed. Winter thin and with her hair different, Abigail looked different enough to create doubt. Dawson studied her face, then the photograph, then her face again. You do have similar coloring. Half the women in Wyoming Territory have auburn hair and green eyes, Sheriff. It's not exactly rare. No, he admitted. It's not. Is there a problem with my employment here? Abigail's voice took on a sharper edge. Because if Mr. Morrison's word isn't good enough, I'm happy to return east. But I'd appreciate knowing if I've done something wrong beyond accepting honest work. The challenge in her tone was perfect, not defensive indignant. Dawson backed down. No, ma'am, no problem, just doing my job. He turned to Caleb. Sorry for the inconvenience, Morrison, but Warren's convinced his sister-in-law is somewhere in Bitter Creek. He's got Judge Morrison signing search warrants left and right. His sister-in-law is probably dead in a snowbank somewhere, Caleb said. Woman tries to run in a blizzard, that's usually how it ends. Yeah. Dawson looked troubled. That's what worries me. Warren ain't acting like a man concerned for family. He's acting like a man who lost something valuable. Property's valuable, Abigail said quietly. People less so, at least to some men. Dawson's eyes sharpened. You know Warren Thorne, Miss Clark? I know his type. Every town has them. Men who measure worth in dollars and cents. That's a harsh judgment for someone you just met. I've been in town less than a day, and already I've heard his name 3 times, each time attached to some display of power. Doesn't take long to spot a bully, Sheriff. Dawson actually smiled at that. No, I suppose it doesn't. He headed for the door, then paused. Word of advice, Miss Clark. Keep your opinions about Warren Thorne quiet. He's not a man who forgives insults. I'll keep that in mind. After Dawson left, they stood in silence for a full minute. Then Abigail sat down hard, her legs giving out. That was close, she whispered. Too close. He knows something's off. He's just not sure what. How long before Warren comes himself? Today, probably. He won't trust Dawson's report. Then I need to be perfect. Perfect housekeeper. Perfect story. Perfect everything. One slip and... You were perfect just now. Dawson believed you. Dawson wanted to believe me. There's a difference. Abigail looked up at the loft where 2 pairs of eyes watched from the shadows. Your children don't believe me, and if they don't, Warren won't either. She was right. Lucas and Molly were the weak point. Kids couldn't lie worth a damn, especially traumatized ones. Then we make them believe it, Caleb said. Starting now. He called the children down. Lucas came reluctantly, Molly hidden behind him like a shield. Listen careful, Caleb said. Miss Abigail is our new housekeeper. She came from Philadelphia to help with cooking, cleaning, and teaching you your letters. If anyone asks, that's what you say. Nothing more, nothing less. You want us to lie? Lucas said flatly. I want you to be smart. Warren Thorne is dangerous. If he finds out who Miss Abigail really is, he'll hurt her. Maybe hurt us too. So yes, I'm asking you to lie. Just like I lied to protect you when your ma was dying, and you asked if she was going to be okay. Lucas flinched. That's not the same. It's exactly the same. Sometimes lying is the mercy we give people when the truth would destroy them. Ma wouldn't. Your ma lied to you every day the last month she was alive. Told you she was feeling better when she wasn't. Told you the baby was fine when it wasn't. Told you she'd be there for Christmas when she knew she wouldn't. Caleb's voice cracked. She lied because she loved you. Because sometimes love looks like protecting people from truths they can't handle yet. Tears ran down Lucas's face. I hate you for saying that. I know, son. But you needed to hear it. Molly made a small sound, not quite a cry, not quite a word. She pulled away from Lucas and ran to Abigail, burying her face in the woman's skirts. Everyone froze. Abigail's hands hovered over Molly's head, uncertain. Sweetheart. Ma. Molly whispered into the fabric. Ma. The word hung in the air like a gunshot. No, baby, Abigail said gently, carefully putting her hands on Molly's shoulders. I'm not your ma. I'm Miss Abigail. Ma's gone. Molly's voice was muffled, broken. Gone, gone, gone. Yes, your ma's gone. And I'm so sorry. I can't imagine how much that hurts. Don't want hurt. Want ma. I know. Abigail knelt despite the pain in her frostbitten feet, bringing herself to Molly's level. But your ma loved you so much, and she'd want you to be brave. Can you be brave for her? Molly shook her head violently. That's okay. You don't have to be brave all the time. Just sometimes. Just when it really matters. Abigail's voice was steady, comforting. And when you can't be brave, your pa and your brother will be brave for you. That's what families do. Are you family? Molly asked, her voice so small, Caleb barely heard it. Abigail looked at Caleb, a question in her eyes. He nodded slightly. I'm going to be living here for a while, Abigail said carefully. So I guess that makes me part of your family, if that's all right with you. Molly thought about this. Her face scrunched in concentration. Then she nodded once and walked back to Lucas, taking his hand. Lucas stared at Abigail with something like hatred. Don't think you can replace her. I would never try. Your mother was irreplaceable. I'm just someone who's here now trying to help, that's all. We don't need your help. Maybe not, but your father does. And sometimes we do things for the people we love, even when we don't want to. Lucas opened his mouth to argue, but Molly tugged his hand. Hungry, she said clearly. 2 syllables strung together more than she'd managed in weeks. I'll make you something, Abigail started. I'll do it, Lucas snapped. Come on, Molly. He led his sister to the stove, pointedly excluding Abigail from the task. But Molly looked back, once her eyes curious, rather than afraid. Progress. Painful, insufficient, but progress nonetheless. Caleb helped Abigail to a chair. Her hands were shaking. That was brave, he said quietly. That was terrifying. She called me Ma. She's 6. She doesn't understand the difference between wanting and having. But Lucas does, and I just lost whatever small chance I had of winning him over. You were honest with him. That's worth more than him liking you. Is it because right now it just feels like I'm making everything worse? Before Caleb could respond, more hoofbeats. Multiple riders this time. They're back, Abigail whispered. Caleb looked out the window and cursed. Warren Thorne sat astride his horse, flanked by 4 men. Behind them, a wagon carried Judge Morrison and a woman Caleb didn't recognize. Expensive clothes, severe face hair pulled back so tight it must have hurt. That's Dr. Pritchard's wife, Abigail breathed. She evaluates women for asylum commitments. Warren brought her to examine me last month, called me hysterical. Then we don't let her near you. Caleb, she's here with a judge. We can't refuse. Watch me. He stepped onto the porch before they could dismount, rifle visible, but not aimed. A statement without words this far and no farther. Warren dismounted with the confidence of a man who'd bought his welcome. Morrison. We need to speak with your housekeeper. Why? Because Judge Morrison has concerns about your hiring practices. The judge was a thin man with watery eyes and a weak chin. He looked uncomfortable being here, which meant Warren was paying him enough to overcome his discomfort. My hiring practices are my business, Caleb said, not when they involve harboring a fugitive. Warren's smile was cold. We have evidence that your housekeeper is actually my ward Abigail Thorne. Judge Morrison has authorized a medical examination to confirm identity. You're not bringing that woman near my house. The law says otherwise. Warren pulled out a paper. This is a court order. Refuse, and I'll have the sheriff arrest you for obstruction. Caleb's hand tightened on his rifle. This was the moment. He could refuse start a fight he'd lose. Or he could let them in gambling that Abigail could maintain her lie under professional scrutiny. Behind him, the door opened. Abigail stepped out, her spine straight despite the fear in her eyes. It's all right, Mr. Morrison. Let them come. I have nothing to hide. Miss Clark, if Mr. Thorne believes I'm someone I'm not, an examination will prove otherwise. Won't it, Mr. Thorne? Warren's eyes narrowed, searching her face for cracks in the facade. We'll see. Mrs. Pritchard. The severe woman dismounted and approached the porch. She looked Abigail up and down, like she was evaluating livestock. Inside, we'll need privacy. No, Caleb said. Whatever examination happens out here where I can see it. This is a medical procedure. And this is my property. You want to examine her, you do it where I say, or you don't do it at all. Judge Morrison cleared his throat. Perhaps we can compromise. Mrs. Pritchard can conduct her examination in the barn that provides privacy while keeping Mr. Morrison's concerns addressed. It wasn't ideal, but it was better than letting them inside near the children. Fine, Caleb agreed. They moved to the barn, Warren watching every step like a hawk. Mrs. Pritchard took Abigail behind a horse stall while the men waited. This is ridiculous, Caleb said. Woman shows up for honest work and you're treating her like a criminal. If she's who she claims, she has nothing to fear, Warren replied smoothly. And if she's not? What then? You take her anyway. Lock her up because she happens to look like your sister-in-law. I'm protecting family. You'd do the same. Family you tried to put in an asylum. Real protective. Warren's face darkened. Be careful, Morrison. You're dancing mighty close to slander. Truth ain't slander. From behind the stall, Mrs. Pritchard's voice rose. Remove your dress, please. Silence. Then Abigail's voice, quiet but firm. No. The examination requires... I'm not removing my clothing for strangers. If you need to verify I'm not Abigail Thorne, ask me questions. Look at my face, but I won't be treated like livestock at auction. Your refusal suggests you have something to hide. My refusal suggests I have dignity. There's a difference. Mrs. Pritchard emerged, her face pinched with displeasure. She's being uncooperative. I can't complete the examination without full cooperation. Then examine what you can see, Judge Morrison said, clearly wanting this over with. Mrs. Pritchard pulled out spectacles and a small notebook. She studied Abigail's face, hands, and posture, occasionally writing notes. Scars, she asked. None visible, Abigail replied. Distinguishing marks. Freckles on my nose and shoulders. Small birthmark on my left wrist, that's all. And you claim to be Abigail Clark from Philadelphia. I don't claim. I am Abigail Clark from Philadelphia. Can you prove it? Can you prove you're Mrs. Pritchard? Or is your word supposed to be worth more than mine because your husband has a medical degree? The challenge in Abigail's voice was perfect, not aggressive, just refusing to be cowed. Mrs. Pritchard's face flushed. Judge Morrison, this woman is clearly... Clearly what? Abigail interrupted. Articulate, self-possessed, unwilling to be bullied. Those aren't signs of mental incompetence, Mrs. Pritchard. They're signs of a woman who knows her rights. Warren stepped forward. Abigail, stop this charade. Come home. I'll drop the guardianship claim. We'll work something out about the property. I'm not Abigail Thorne. I know your voice. I know your face. You can change your name, but you can't change who you are. You're right. I can't change who I am. And who I am is a woman who came west for honest work only to be accused of being someone else by a man I've never met. She turned to the judge. Sir, is there any actual evidence I'm this missing woman beyond Mr. Thorne's insistence? Judge Morrison looked uncomfortable. Well, there's the resemblance. Which proves nothing. You yourself said half the women in the territory have similar coloring. The timing is suspicious. Suspicious isn't evidence. I arrived when I was expected to arrive. I have correspondence from Mr. Morrison confirming our arrangement. She was bluffing. They had no letters. But Warren didn't know that. Show me these letters, Warren demanded. They're private correspondence between employer and employee. You have no legal right to see them. Judge. Morrison held up his hand. Actually, she's right. Without probable cause, private correspondence is protected. Warren's face went purple. This is absurd. Everyone can see. What everyone can see, Abigail said coolly, is a powerful man trying to bully a woman who has nothing but her word and her dignity. Is that how justice works in Bitter Creek? Because if so, I chose poorly when I decided to settle here. The words hung in the air, a challenge no one quite knew how to answer. Finally, Judge Morrison cleared his throat. Mrs. Pritchard, what's your professional opinion? The woman's mouth tightened. Without a full examination, I cannot definitively say. But... She paused, clearly not wanting to admit defeat. The subject presents none of the markers of hysteria or mental incompetence that Mr. Thorne described. She is articulate, self-aware, and appropriately assertive. If this is Abigail Thorne, she has made a remarkable recovery. If it is not, then Mr. Thorne has wasted considerable time and resources pursuing the wrong woman. Warren's face went from purple to white. You're saying... I'm saying I cannot support a guardianship claim based on this examination. The woman before me appears fully capable of managing her own affairs. Then examine her more thoroughly. I cannot force an examination on an unwilling subject without evidence of immediate danger to herself or others. That's the law, Mr. Thorne. Even for men as influential as you. Warren turned to Caleb, his eyes promising violence. This isn't over, Morrison. Not by a long shot. Never thought it was. They left in a cloud of dust and anger. Caleb watched until they were out of sight, then turned to Abigail. She was shaking so hard she could barely stand. You did good, he said. I thought I was going to pass out. But you didn't. You stood up to them and won. For today. But Warren won't stop. You know that. Yeah, I know. They walked back to the house in silence. Inside, Lucas stood by the window, his face pale. They're going to come back, the boy said. And next time, they'll bring more men. Maybe. But maybe by then we'll have figured out what to do. There's nothing to do. Warren always wins. Everyone knows that. Abigail knelt beside Lucas, ignoring the pain in her feet. Your father hasn't lost yet, and neither have I. That's something. It's not enough. Maybe not, but it's what we have. Sometimes that's all courage is, standing up when you know you might lose because lying down is worse. Lucas looked at her for a long moment, something shifting behind his eyes. Not acceptance? Not yet. But maybe the beginning of respect. You really from Philadelphia? He asked. Parts of me are. The parts that matter right now. That's not a real answer. No, but it's the truth anyway. He thought about this, then nodded once and went upstairs. Caleb sat down heavily. He's starting to believe you. He's starting to see I won't run. That's different than believing. It's a start. Abigail moved to the stove, her movement stiff but determined. I need to make dinner, real dinner. If I'm going to be a housekeeper, I need to act like one. Abigail. Don't. Don't tell me to rest. Don't tell me it'll be fine. We both know Warren's already planning his next move. I need to be ready. Your children need to see I'm competent, not just desperate. And I need to feel like I'm earning my place here instead of just taking up space. She was right. Caleb knew she was right. But watching her push through pain and exhaustion to prove herself broke something in his chest that had been frozen for 3 years. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For being brave. For standing up to Warren. For trying with the kids even though they're making it hard. For all of it." Abigail's hands stilled on the bread dough she was kneading. "I'm not brave, Caleb. I'm just out of other options. There's a difference." "No, there's not." Their eyes met across the small kitchen. Something passed between them, understanding maybe, or recognition. Two people who'd lost everything and were fighting for whatever came next. "I should check the fence line before dark," Caleb said, breaking the moment before it became too much. "And I should teach your children their letters. If I'm claiming to be here for that purpose, I should actually do it. Lucas will fight you on it. Then he'll fight me, but at least he'll be fighting someone who's still there in the morning. That's more than some kids get." Caleb left her to her cooking and went to saddle his horse. The afternoon sun was already sinking toward the western peaks, turning the snow golden. Beautiful country. Hard country. The kind that killed the weak and tested the strong. He didn't know yet which category Abigail fell into, but he was starting to suspect she was stronger than any of them had guessed, including herself. 2 weeks passed in a rhythm of careful routines and cautious trust. Abigail cooked, cleaned, and taught the children their letters. Lucas resisted every lesson but absorbed them anyway. Molly started speaking in full sentences again, though only to Abigail and only when Lucas wasn't watching. Caleb watched it all from the edges, afraid to hope, afraid not to. Then the letter came. "What is it?" Abigail asked, seeing his face go pale. "Warren's filed new papers. Judge Morrison signed an order declaring you legally dead." "Dead," says Abigail Thorne, perished in the January blizzard. Body never recovered, but presumed deceased based on overwhelming evidence of exposure. With you legally dead, your property transfers to your nearest male relative. Warren. Warren. Abigail sat down hard, her face ashen. "He can't do that. I'm standing right here." "You're not Abigail Thorne, remember? You're Abigail Clark from Philadelphia. Different woman entirely." The bitter irony of it hit them both at the same time. The lie that had protected her now trapped her. If she admitted her real identity, Warren would seize her under the guardianship order. If she maintained the fiction, she lost everything she owned. "There has to be something we can do," Abigail whispered. "Federal marshal in Cheyenne. We could send word, ask for an investigation into the fraudulent death certificate. That takes months. By then Warren will have sold my property to the railroad. Then we find another way. What way? Warren owns the judge, the sheriff, half the businesses in town. Who's going to stand against him for a woman who doesn't legally exist?" Caleb had no answer. That night, after the children were asleep, they sat by the fire in heavy silence. The wind had picked up outside, rattling the shutters like restless ghosts. "I should leave," Abigail said finally. "Go somewhere Warren can't reach. Start over with a new name, a new life." "You'd give up everything. Your property, your husband's memory, your rights." "I'd give up my life if I stayed. Warren won't stop until he has what he wants. And every day I'm here, I put you and your children in danger. That's my choice to make, not yours." "No, it's not." Abigail stood her back to him. "You didn't ask for this, Caleb. You pulled a dying woman out of the snow, and now you're caught in a war that isn't yours. I won't be responsible for what happens to your family." "You're not responsible. Warren is." "Warren's a force of nature. You don't blame the storm for destroying your crops. You just rebuild or you move on." "And you're moving on." "I'm surviving. It's what I do." Caleb rose, crossing to stand behind her. Close enough to touch, but not touching. What if there was another way? There isn't. What if we made it so Warren couldn't touch you legally permanently? Abigail turned confusion on her face. How? Marry me. The words hung between them like smoke. Abigail's mouth opened, closed, opened again. That's insane. Maybe, but it would work. As my wife, you'd be under my protection. Any guardianship claim would have to go through me first. And if you're married to someone else, Warren's claim that you're mentally incompetent falls apart. Married women manage households, raise children, handle money. Hard to call someone insane when they're functioning as a wife and mother. Caleb, you can't marry me just to protect me from Warren. Why not? Because marriage is supposed to mean something. It's supposed to be about love, about choosing someone, about building a life together, not about legal maneuvering. And who says it can't be both? Abigail went still. What? Caleb took her hands, his scarred fingers gentle against her healing skin. I've been watching you for 2 weeks. Watched you fight through pain to cook for my children. Watched you be patient with Lucas when he was cruel, gentle with Molly when she was scared. Watched you stand up to Warren and his judge and that horrible woman never flinching, never breaking. I flinched plenty. I just hid it well. That's courage, Abigail. That's strength. And I've been alone for 3 years telling myself I didn't need anyone, didn't want anyone. But you walked into my life and made me a liar. Tears gathered in her eyes. Caleb, I'm damaged. I'm hunted. I'm bringing trouble to your doorstep. So am I. So are we all. Doesn't mean we have to face it alone. Your children would have a mother again. Someone who teaches them, protects them, loves them. I've seen how Molly looks at you. How Lucas is starting to trust you even though he doesn't want to. They need you. I need you. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you're brave and stubborn and too proud to accept help even when you're drowning. I know you make biscuits that don't taste like rocks, and you never complain about the cold even when your fingers are still healing. I know you stayed when leaving would have been easier, and you fought when surrendering would have been safer. He lifted her hands to his lips, pressing a kiss against her knuckles. I know I want to wake up every morning knowing you're in my house, in my life, in whatever future I have left. Is that enough? Abigail was crying now, tears streaming down her freckled cheeks. It's not fair to you. Marrying a woman with enemies, with baggage, with nothing to offer but trouble. Let me decide what's fair to me. And if Warren comes after you, after your land, your children, then we fight him together. Isn't that what marriage is supposed to be? 2 people facing the world side by side. She laughed through her tears. That's not what my marriage was. Samuel and I stood side by side, but we faced different directions. He looked at his bottle. I looked at everything else. I'm not Samuel. No, you're not. Silence stretched between them, filled with possibility and fear. Finally, Abigail squeezed his hands. Ask me again, properly this time. Caleb dropped to one knee, his bad leg protesting. Abigail Clark, or Thorne, or whoever you choose to be. Will you marry me? Not just for protection, not just for the children, but because I'm a stubborn fool who's fallen in love with a woman too brave for her own good. Yes, she whispered. God help me, yes. He rose and kissed her gentle at first, then deeper as 3 years of loneliness broke apart inside him. She tasted like tears and coffee and hope. We'll need a witness, he said when they finally parted. Someone Warren can't buy. Reverend Thomas at the church is honest. He baptized Molly. And he'll marry us tomorrow if I ask. Tomorrow. Abigail looked stunned. That's so fast. Warren moves fast. We move faster. She nodded, still dazed. The children. We have to tell them. In the morning. Right now. He pulled her close again, resting his chin on her hair. Right now, I just want to hold you. and believe this is real. It's real, she whispered against his chest. Terrifying and complicated and probably foolish, but real. They stood like that until the fire burned low, two wounded souls finding shelter in each other. Morning came gray and cold. Caleb gathered the children before breakfast, his face serious. I have something to tell you both. Miss Abigail and I are getting married. Today. Lucas's face went blank. Molly looked between her father and Abigail with wide eyes. Why? Lucas asked flatly. Because I love her, and because it will help protect her from Mr. Thorne. So it's not real. It's just pretend, like the housekeeper story. No. Caleb knelt to his son's level. It's real. The protection is part of it, but it's not all of it. I care about Miss Abigail, very much, and I think she can make our family whole again. We already have a family. We don't need her. I need her, Lucas. Is that enough? The boy's jaw tightened. Ma's only been dead 3 years. I know, and I'll never stop loving your Ma. But the heart is strange. It can hold love for someone gone and love for someone here at the same time. That doesn't make sense. Lots of things about love don't make sense. That's part of what makes it real. Molly tugged at Abigail's sleeve. Does this mean you'll stay forever? Abigail knelt beside her. If you want me to. I want you to. Molly's voice was fierce. Promise you won't leave like Ma did. I can't promise I'll never die, sweetheart. Nobody can promise that. But I can promise I'll fight to stay as long as I possibly can. Is that enough? Molly thought about it, then nodded solemnly. Okay. Lucas watched the exchange, his face unreadable. Pa, can I talk to you outside? They walked to the barn. Lucas's small shoulders rigid with tension. Once inside, the boy turned on his father. You're replacing Ma. I'm not. You are. You're putting another woman in her place in her bed wearing her ring probably, like she never mattered. Your Ma mattered more than anything in this world except you and your sister. Marrying Abigail doesn't change that. Then why are you doing it? Caleb sat on a hay bale, pulling Lucas down beside him. You remember when Ma was sick, those last few weeks? Lucas nodded, his face pale. She made me promise something. Said if I ever found someone who made me feel alive again, I should let them in. Said she didn't want me to be alone forever, punishing myself for not being able to save her. She never told me that. Because it was between her and me. But it's true. I swore I'd try when I was ready. And I think Miss Abigail is someone your Ma would have liked. Lucas's eyes filled with tears. I don't want to forget her. You won't. Neither will I. Abigail isn't here to replace your Ma's memory. She's here to help us make new memories. Different ones. That's not betrayal, son. That's living. The boy was silent for a long moment. Then in a small voice, Do you really love her? I'm starting to. More every day. Does she love you? I think she's starting to too. Lucas wiped his face roughly. If she hurts Molly, I'll never forgive her. Or you. Fair enough? They walked back to the house together. Lucas didn't say anything to Abigail, but he didn't glare at her either. For now, that was enough. Reverend Thomas arrived at noon, his worn Bible tucked under his arm. He asked no questions about the haste, just performed the ceremony with quiet dignity. Lucas and Molly stood as witnesses, their faces solemn. Do you, Caleb Morrison, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. Do you, Abigail, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? A heartbeat of hesitation. Then, I do. By the power vested in me by the territory of Wyoming, I pronounce you man and wife. Caleb kissed her gently, aware of the children watching. Molly clapped. Lucas looked away. It was done. They were still cleaning up from the small celebration when the riders came. 6 men this time, Warren at their head, rage twisting his features into something ugly. Morrison, come out and face me. Caleb stepped onto the porch, rifle in hand. Abigail stayed inside with the children, but he could feel her watching through the window. "Warren, what brings you out in such a hurry?" "You know damn well what. I just heard from Reverend Thomas. You married her." "Married my housekeeper, yes. Is that a crime now?" "That woman is my ward. You had no right." "She's not your ward. Abigail Thorne is legally dead, remember? You filed the papers yourself. The woman I married is Abigail Clark. Different person entirely." Warren's face went purple. "You think you're clever. You think this changes anything. I think it changes everything. My wife is under my protection now. Any claim you have goes through me, and I don't recognize your authority over anyone in my household. I'll have you arrested for harboring a fugitive." "What fugitive? Abigail Thorne is dead. You said so yourself." The logic was circular and maddening, and Warren knew it. His own legal maneuvering had created a trap he couldn't escape. "This isn't over, Morrison." "No, it's not. But the next move is mine, not yours." Caleb's voice hardened. "I'm filing a complaint with the federal marshal in Cheyenne. Fraud, intimidation, abuse of legal process. Your pet judge might be bought, but federal authorities aren't so easy to corrupt. You have no proof of anything. I have witnesses, I have documents, and I have a wife who's willing to testify about everything you've done." Caleb stepped forward, his height advantage suddenly significant. "Go home, Warren, lick your wounds, because this fight just got a lot more expensive for you." Warren's hand twitched toward his holster. His men tensed. "You're making a powerful enemy," Warren said quietly. "Already had one. At least now, he knows I'm fighting back." For a long moment, no one moved. Then Warren wheeled his horse and rode away, his men following. Caleb waited until they were out of sight before lowering his rifle. His hands were shaking. Abigail appeared beside him. That was dangerous. That was necessary. He'll come back. I know. With more men. Maybe guns. Probably. And you're not scared. Caleb turned to look at her, this woman who had somehow become his wife in the space of a morning. Terrified. But I was more scared of losing you. She took his hand, her fingers intertwining with his. Then we prepare. Together. Inside, Lucas stood by the window, his face pale but set. Pa, what do we do now? Caleb looked at his son, at his daughter hiding behind her brother, at the woman who had walked out of a blizzard and into his heart. Now we fight, he said. All of us. As a family. Lucas nodded slowly. Then, for the first time since Abigail arrived, he looked directly at her. I'll help, he said quietly. If you need me. Abigail's eyes filled with tears. Thank you, Lucas. Don't thank me yet. I still don't trust you completely. That's fair. Trust takes time. Yeah. He paused. But you make Pa happy. And Molly talks to you, so maybe you're not so bad. It wasn't acceptance. Not quite. But it was a door opening, just a crack. And sometimes a crack was all the light needed to get through. The next 3 days were quiet. Too quiet. Caleb rode out each morning to check the perimeter, half expecting to find Warren's men waiting in ambush. Nothing. The silence felt worse than an attack. He's planning something, Abigail said on the third evening. Warren doesn't retreat. He regroups. I know. We should leave. Take the children somewhere safe until this blows over. Running won't make it blow over. Warren will follow. Men like him always do. Then what? Before Caleb could answer, hoofbeats. Single rider coming fast. He grabbed his rifle and moved to the door. The rider was a boy, maybe 12, on a pony, lathered with sweat. Mr. Morrison, message from town. Caleb took the folded paper, tossed the boy a coin. The message was short, in handwriting he didn't recognize. Warren's bought off 3 of your neighbors, Peterson, Warren, and Freeman. They're testifying tomorrow that you stole cattle from their herds. Judge Morrison is issuing an arrest warrant at dawn. Abigail read over his shoulder. Cattle theft, that's a hanging offense. Warren knows that. Those are the men who stood with you before. How did he? Money, threats. Probably both. Caleb crumpled the paper. Doesn't matter how. What matters is, I'll be in jail by this time tomorrow. We have to run. No. Caleb, be reasonable. If I run, I'm guilty in everyone's eyes. Warren wins. He takes my land, my reputation, everything I've built, and you and the children become targets with no one to protect you. If you stay, you hang. Not if I can prove the charges are false. How Warren owns the evidence, the witnesses, the judge. What could you possibly— A small voice interrupted from the loft. Pa, I know something. Lucas stood at the top of the ladder, his face pale in the lamplight. What do you know, son? The boy climbed down slowly like he was walking to his own execution. Mr. Peterson's boy told me something last week. Said his pa was scared. Said some men came and threatened to burn their barn if Mr. Peterson didn't do what they wanted. What men? Didn't say, but he said they left papers, fake papers about cattle brands. Made it look like some of our cows had Peterson's marks changed. Caleb felt hope flicker. Where are these papers? Hidden in their barn. Billy said his pa was too scared to destroy them in case Warren turned on him later. Wanted insurance. Abigail grabbed Caleb's arm. If we could get those papers, it would prove the charges are fabricated. Warren's whole case falls apart. But Peterson won't give them to you willingly. No. Caleb looked at his son. But Billy might. Lucas's face hardened with determination. I'll go. Tonight. Billy and me are friends. He'll help if I ask. It's too dangerous. Pa, let me do this. Please. The boy's voice cracked. You saved Miss Abigail, even though it was dangerous. You married her, even though it was dangerous. Let me be brave, too. Caleb looked at his son. Really looked, and saw the man Lucas was becoming. Scared, but determined. Young, but not foolish. If anything feels wrong, you ride home. No heroes. Understood? Yes, sir. And take the back trails. Don't let anyone see you. Lucas nodded, already moving toward his coat. Abigail caught his arm. Lucas, be careful. The boy looked at her for a long moment. Then quietly, I will, Ma. Ye. He was gone before she could respond, but the word hung in the air like a blessing. Abigail's hand found Caleb's. Did he just— Yeah, he did. They waited in silence as the hours crawled past. Midnight came and went. 1 o'clock. 2. Molly had fallen asleep in Abigail's lap, her small body warm with trust. At 3 in the morning, hoofbeats. Caleb grabbed his rifle, but it was Lucas riding hard, a bundle clutched against his chest. Got them! The boy burst through the door, breathless and triumphant. Billy showed me where. There's papers, Pa. Lots of them. Letters from Warren, instructions to lie, money receipts. Everything. Caleb spread the documents on the table, his hands shaking. It was all there. Written proof of bribery, intimidation, fraud. Enough to destroy Warren's case, and maybe Warren himself. You did good, son. You did real good. Lucas glowed under the praise. Then his face sobered. Pa, Billy's family is in trouble now. If Warren finds out they helped us, we'll protect them, all of them. That's what neighbors do. Even when they were going to lie about you. Even then. Fear makes people do things they're ashamed of. But bravery is contagious. Your friend Billy proved that tonight. Abigail wrapped Lucas in a hug he didn't resist. You saved your father. You know that. I helped, Lucas mumbled against her shoulder. We all helped. Together. And in that moment, watching his son embrace the woman who had become his wife, Caleb felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years. Hope. Real, solid, unshakable hope. The dawn was coming, and with it would come Warren and his false charges. But for the first time since this nightmare began, Caleb knew they were going to win. Not because they were stronger or richer or better connected, but because they were a family. And family, it turned out, was the one thing Warren Thorne couldn't buy. Dawn broke blood red over the horizon. Caleb had been awake for hours studying the documents Lucas had brought, memorizing every detail. Beside him, Abigail brewed coffee with steady hands, though her face was pale. "They'll be here soon," she said. "I know. Are you ready?" Caleb looked at the papers spread across the table. Warren's handwriting, amounts paid, names of men bribed, instructions to lie. Enough to hang Warren 10 times over if the law was honest. "Ready as I'll ever be." Lucas came down from the loft dressed in his Sunday clothes without being asked. Behind him, Molly clutched her brother's hand, her eyes wide but dry. "We want to be there," Lucas said. "When you fight him. It's too dangerous." "Pa." The boy's voice was firm. "We're a family now. You said so yourself. Families face things together." Caleb looked at Abigail. She nodded slightly. "All right, but you stay behind me, both of you, no matter what happens." They rode into town as the sun climbed higher. The streets were already crowded. Word had spread about the arrest warrant. Faces watched from windows and doorways, some sympathetic, most just curious. The courthouse was a 2-story building at the center of town, its wooden facade weathered by Wyoming winters. Sheriff Dawson stood on the steps, looking uncomfortable. Behind him, Judge Morrison waited with Warren Thorne at his side. Warren's smile was triumphant. "Morrison, I see you've saved us the trouble of fetching you." Caleb dismounted slowly, helping Abigail down, then the children. "Heard you had business with me." "Business, you're under arrest for cattle theft. 3 witnesses have testified." 3 witnesses you paid to lie." Caleb's voice carried across the gathering crowd. "I have proof." Warren's smile flickered. "What proof?" "Letters. In your handwriting. Promising money to Peterson Freeman and Warren in exchange for false testimony." Caleb pulled the documents from his coat, along with receipts showing payments made from your bank account. The crowd murmured. Sheriff Dawson's eyes went wide. "Those are forgeries," Warren said quickly. "Fabricated by a desperate man trying to avoid justice." "Then you won't mind if I read them aloud? Let folks decide for themselves what's true." "This is absurd." January 15, 1883. Caleb read, his voice clear and strong. "Dear Mr. Peterson, as discussed, I require your testimony regarding cattle found on Caleb Morrison's property. You will state that the brands were altered from your original marks. In exchange, I will forgive your outstanding debt of $300 and provide an additional $200 for your cooperation. Signed, Warren Thorne." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Peterson himself stood near the back, his face ashen. "There are 3 more letters," Caleb continued. "Similar offers to Freeman and Warren, plus bank records showing the exact amounts transferred on the exact dates mentioned." Judge Morrison's face had gone gray. "Mr. Thorne, is this true?" "Of course not. The man is clearly." "There's also this." Abigail stepped forward, her voice steady, despite the fear Caleb knew she was fighting. "A letter from Warren to Mrs. Pritchard offering $500 to declare me mentally unfit. And correspondence with Judge Morrison himself discussing how to expedite the guardianship proceedings in exchange for favorable rulings on Warren's railroad contracts." The judge's face went from gray to white. "That's a lie." "Is it?" Abigail held up the paper. "That's your signature, isn't it? And your seal." The crowd's murmur became a roar. People pressed forward, craning to see the documents. Sheriff Dawson looked like he wanted to disappear. Warren's mask finally cracked, his face twisted with rage as he turned on Caleb. "You think this changes anything? I own this town. I own these people. A few scraps of paper won't. They're not scraps. They're evidence. Evidence I've already sent copies of to the federal marshal in Cheyenne." Caleb stepped closer, his height advantage suddenly significant. "By this time tomorrow, there'll be a federal investigation into corruption in Bitter Creek. Your pet judge, your bought witnesses, Your fraudulent death certificate for a woman who's very much alive. You wouldn't dare. I already did, last night. The telegraph office was happy to stay open late for such an important message. Warren's hand moved toward his holster. Caleb tensed. I wouldn't, Sheriff Dawson said quietly. The lawman had drawn his own weapon pointed at Warren. Whatever else happens today, I'm not letting you shoot an unarmed man in front of witnesses. He's not unarmed. His rifle's on his horse. His hands are empty. You draw on him, I put you down. Dawson's voice was flat. I've looked the other way too long, Warren. Took your money, followed your orders. But this ends now. You're making a mistake, Dawson. No, I made the mistake years ago when I let you buy my badge. Today I'm fixing it. Warren looked around searching for allies. His hired men hung back unwilling to act against an armed sheriff. The townspeople who'd once deferred to him now watched with open hostility. This isn't over, Warren hissed. Yes, Abigail said softly. It is. She stepped forward, and for the first time, Caleb saw the woman she'd been before Samuel's death, before Warren's persecution. Confident. Unafraid. Magnificent. My name is Abigail Thorne. I am Samuel Thorne's widow and the legal owner of Thorne Mercantile. I am not dead. I am not insane. And I am not afraid of you anymore, Warren. You're nothing. A woman with no family, no resources, no... I have a family. Abigail's hand found Caleb's. I have a husband who fought for me when no one else would. Children who call me mother. A home where I'm wanted, not just tolerated. That's more than you'll ever have, Warren. All your money, all your power, and you're alone. You've always been alone. The words hit Warren like physical blows. His face contorted. Samuel should have let you starve, he spat. Should have listened to father and married someone suitable. Instead, he chose a nothing, a nobody, He chose someone who loved him. Someone who stayed with him through sickness and failure and disappointment. Someone who held his hand when he died. Abigail's voice cracked, but didn't break. What did you ever give him, Warren? Criticism, contempt, impossible standards he could never meet. You didn't lose a brother when Samuel died. You lost a punching bag. Shut up. He wrote about you in his journal. Did you know that pages and pages about how he could never please you, never be good enough, never escape your shadow? He drank because of you, Warren. He died because of you. And now you want to steal what little he left behind because even dead, you can't stop competing with him. I said shut up. Warren lunged forward. Caleb moved to intercept, but he wasn't fast enough. Lucas was. The boy stepped between Warren and Abigail, his small body rigid with defiance. Don't you touch my ma. Warren stopped, startled by the child's interference. Lucas, Caleb started. No, Pa. He's a bully. Bullies back down when you stand up to them. That's what you taught me. Warren stared at the boy, then laughed. A cruel, ugly sound. This is what you've saddled yourself with, Abigail. A broken-down farmer and his damaged children. Samuel would be proud. Lucas's voice didn't waver. Proud that she found people who love her. Proud that she didn't give up. Proud that she's braver than you'll ever be. The crowd had gone completely silent. Warren looked around, seeing judgment in every face. This isn't over, he said again, but his voice had lost its conviction. Yes, it is. Sheriff Dawson stepped forward, handcuffs in hand. Warren Thorne, you're under arrest for bribery, fraud, intimidation, and conspiracy to commit perjury. You have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it. Warren's face went purple. You can't. I can. And I am. Dawson looked at Judge Morrison. You too, Your Honor. Federal authorities will want to speak with both of you. The judge sagged like a puppet with cut strings. I never meant... Warren said it was just paperwork. I didn't know. Save it for the marshal. Dawson led both men away. The crowd parted like water, no one wanting to be too close to the disgraced pair. Warren's hired guns had already disappeared. Caleb pulled Abigail into his arms, feeling her shake with the release of tension. "It's done," he murmured. "It's really done." "I can't believe—" She pulled back, tears streaming down her face. "Lucas called me Ma, in front of everyone." He meant it. Did he? Or was it just for show to make the story more convincing? Lucas appeared at her side. "I meant it," he said quietly. "You're not replacing my real Ma. Nobody can do that. But you're good. For Pa. For Molly. For me. Even though I didn't want to admit it." Abigail knelt, putting herself at eye level with the boy. "Lucas, what you did today. Standing up to Warren like that. You were so brave." "I learned from Pa, and from you." The boy's face reddened. "You didn't run away when things got hard. You stayed and fought. That's what family does." She pulled him into a hug. He stiffened at first, then slowly relaxed, his thin arms coming up to return the embrace. Molly wiggled between them, wanting to be included. Group hug. For a long moment, they stood like that in the middle of Bitter Creek's main street, a family forged from tragedy and hope. Then Abigail pulled back, wiping her eyes. "We should go home." "Not yet." Caleb's voice was thoughtful. "There's something we need to do first." He led them down the street to a weathered building with a faded sign, Thorn Mercantile. The windows were dark, the door padlocked. "It's still yours," Caleb said. "Warren never legally transferred the property. With him in jail, you can reclaim it." Abigail stared at the building where she'd spent 3 years of her marriage. "I don't know if I want it anymore. There are too many memories here. Bad ones." "Then sell it. Use the money to build something new." "What would I build?" Caleb smiled. "Whatever you want. A school, maybe. Bitter Creek could use one. You said you were a teacher before you married Samuel." "A school?" Abigail's eyes lit up. "I hadn't thought of that." "Or a boarding house like your mother ran, or a dress shop, or nothing at all. The point is, you have choices now. Real choices, not just survival." She looked at the building again, seeing it differently. Not a prison, but a possibility. "Let's go home first," she said finally. "I need time to think." They rode back to the ranch in a different kind of silence than the morning. Not tense, but peaceful. The kind of silence that comes after a storm passes. Molly fell asleep against Abigail's shoulder. Lucas rode beside his father, occasionally glancing over as if to make sure Caleb was still there. "Pa," the boy said finally. "Yeah, son?" "I'm sorry. For what I said before. About hating you. You were scared. Scared people say things they don't mean. But I hurt you. You did. And then you made it right. That's what matters." Lucas was quiet for a moment. "Do you think Warren will really go to prison?" "I think federal marshals don't take kindly to corruption. And with the evidence we have, Warren's looking at years behind bars. Maybe the rest of his life." "Good." The boy's voice was fierce. He deserved it. For what he did to Miss Abigail. To those farmers. To everyone. He did. But Lucas, revenge isn't what this was about. We didn't fight Warren to hurt him. We fought to protect what was ours. There's a difference. What difference? Revenge is about making someone else suffer. Protection is about keeping the people you love safe. One poisons you, the other makes you stronger. Lucas thought about this. Ma, my first Ma, I mean, she used to say something like that. About not letting hate into your heart. Your Ma was wise. She was. The boy looked toward Abigail, who was humming softly to keep Molly asleep. My new Ma is wise too. Different kind of wise, but still good. Caleb's heart swelled. Yeah, she is. They reached the ranch as the sun began its descent. Caleb helped Abigail down, then carried sleeping Molly inside. Lucas took care of the horses without being asked. That evening, they sat around the table for dinner, the first meal they'd shared as a true family, without secrets or pretenses hanging over them. "To victory," Caleb said, raising his cup of coffee. "To family," Abigail added. "To not being scared anymore," Molly contributed. They all looked at Lucas. The boy thought for a moment, then raised his own cup. "To second chances." They drank together, and Caleb felt something he'd thought was dead forever stir in his chest. Joy. Real, uncomplicated joy. Later, after the children were asleep, Caleb and Abigail sat by the fire. Her head rested on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we live. Build something good from what we have." "It seems too simple, after everything we've been through." Simple doesn't mean easy. Farming's simple. Raise crops, tend livestock, survive winter. But it's the hardest work there is. Marriage is the same. Love each other, raise children, face problems together. Simple concept. Lifetime of effort. Abigail turned to look at him. "You've thought about this a lot." "I've had 3 years of thinking and not much else. Lot of time to figure out what matters." "And what matters?" "This." He gestured around the room. "You. The children. This house, this land. Not because they're valuable, but because they're home. Because they're where I belong. I've never had that. Belonging somewhere. You do now." She kissed him softly. "Thank you, Caleb. For everything. For the rescue, the protection, the marriage, all of it. But mostly for believing I was worth fighting for. You are. Never doubt that." "I won't. Not anymore." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the fire burn low. Outside, the wind had died down. Stars appeared in the clear Wyoming sky. "Caleb..." Abigail's voice was hesitant. "Yeah, I think I'm ready. To be more than just a wife on paper." He understood her meaning. Their marriage had been practical, protective. They'd shared a bed, but nothing else, waiting for the right moment. "You sure?" "I'm sure." She stood, offering her hand. "Come to bed. Our bed. Not just mine or yours." He took her hand and followed her into the small bedroom where Catherine had once slept. But the ghost that had haunted that space for 3 years was quiet now. Not gone. Never gone entirely. But at peace. Morning found them tangled together, warm, despite the chill in the air. Abigail woke first, watching Caleb sleep. The hard lines of his face had softened in rest. He looked younger. Happier. She slipped out of bed carefully, not wanting to wake him. The children would be up soon, and there was breakfast to make. In the kitchen, she found Lucas already awake, sitting by the cold stove. "You're up early," she said. "Couldn't sleep." "Bad dreams." "Good ones, actually. That's what scared me." He looked up at her, his eyes too old for 9 years. "I dreamed about Ma, my first Ma. She was smiling. Told me she was happy. That she wanted me to be happy too." Abigail sat beside him. "That sounds like a beautiful dream." It was. But then I woke up and I thought, what if I forget her? What if I get so happy here that I stop remembering what she was like? "You won't forget her, Lucas. Love doesn't work that way. You can love your first mother and still love me. You can be happy now and still miss her. The heart is big enough for all of it. Promise. I promise." He leaned against her and she put her arm around him. They sat like that until Molly came down, demanding pancakes and attention. Caleb emerged shortly after, rumpled and smiling. "What's all this family?" Abigail said simply. And for the first time in longer than any of them could remember, that word felt like a blessing instead of a burden. Spring came to Wyoming territory like a promise finally kept. The snow melted, the ground softened, and the Morrison Ranch stirred back to life after months of frozen waiting. 3 months had passed since Warren's arrest. Federal marshals had come and gone, taking statements, gathering evidence. Warren and Judge Morrison were both awaiting trial in Cheyenne. The charges kept multiplying: fraud, bribery, conspiracy, attempted kidnapping. Warren's empire was crumbling piece by piece. But Abigail barely noticed. She was too busy living. "Ma, watch this." Molly stood on a fence rail, arms spread wide like wings. The 6-year-old had transformed in the months since the courthouse confrontation. She talked constantly, now laughed easily, and followed Abigail everywhere like a small blonde shadow. "Careful, sweetheart. That rail is wobbly." "I'm not scared anymore. Lucas says fear is just excitement wearing the wrong clothes." Abigail smiled at the mangled wisdom. Lucas had been reading her books on philosophy, absorbing bits and pieces without fully understanding them. But the sentiment was right. Your brother is getting too smart for his own good. He says you made him that way, with all the reading lessons. Well, tell him he needs to use some of that smartness on his arithmetic. His numbers are still terrible. Molly giggled and jumped down from the fence, running toward the house where Lucas sat on the porch whittling. The boy had taken up the hobby after watching Caleb do it for years. His carvings were crude but improving horses mostly, though he'd attempted a dog last week that looked more like a deformed cat. "Ma says your numbers are terrible," Molly announced at full volume. Lucas looked up, caught Abigail's eye, and shrugged. "Numbers are boring. Stories are better. Numbers keep you from getting cheated at the general store. That's why I have you. You can do the numbers. I'll do the stories." Abigail crossed the yard, ruffling his hair as she passed. He tolerated the gesture now, sometimes even leaned into it. "Deal, but you still have to finish your arithmetic lesson before dinner." "Yes, Ma." The word still gave her a small thrill every time she heard it. 3 months, and it hadn't faded. She found Caleb in the barn checking on their pregnant mare. The animal was due any day, and Caleb had been hovering like an expectant father. "Any change?" "She's restless. Tonight, I think. Maybe tomorrow." "You've been saying that for a week." "Horses don't follow schedules." He straightened, wiping his hands on his trousers. "How are the children?" "Molly's fearless, and Lucas's arithmetic is still terrible. So normal." Caleb smiled. Really smiled, the kind that reached his eyes. He'd been doing that more often lately. The hard shell he'd built around himself after Catherine's death was cracking, letting light through. "I got a letter today," he said, "from Cheyenne." Abigail's stomach tightened. "About Warren. About his property. With him facing federal charges, his assets are being liquidated. The court is asking if you want to make a claim on Samuel's share of the family estate." Samuel's share? Turns out Warren wasn't the sole heir. Samuel was entitled to 1/3 of the Thorne holdings. Warren just never told him, kept the money himself. Abigail sat down hard on a hay bale. "How much are we talking about?" "Enough to buy this ranch twice over. Enough to build that school you've been talking about. Enough to never worry about money again." The information overwhelmed her. For so long she'd had nothing, no money, no property, no security. Now, suddenly, she might have more than she'd ever dreamed. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything yet. There'll be paperwork, hearings, probably more lawyers than either of us wants to deal with. But the court believes the claim is legitimate." "And if I take it, what does that make me?" "What do you mean?" Abigail looked at her hands, calloused from months of farm work. "I ran from Warren because he wanted to take what wasn't his. If I claim Samuel's inheritance now, am I any different?" "You're completely different." Caleb sat beside her. "Warren tried to steal from a living woman using lies and intimidation. You're claiming what your husband was legally owed money that was hidden from him his whole life." "But I didn't marry Samuel for money. I didn't even know about the inheritance until now." "Exactly. Which is why taking it wouldn't be wrong. Samuel loved you. He would have wanted you to have what was his. Warren kept it from both of you out of spite." Abigail leaned against his shoulder. "What would you do? Take it. Use it to help people. Build your school." Hire teachers, give kids in this territory an education they couldn't get otherwise. That's not greed. That's turning something ugly into something beautiful. You make it sound simple. It is simple. The hard part is accepting that you deserve good things. He tilted her chin up, meeting her eyes. You do, Abigail. After everything you've been through, you deserve every good thing that comes your way. Tears pricked her eyes. I love you. I know. His smile was soft. I love you too. They sat together in the quiet barn, listening to the mare shift restlessly in her stall. Outside, the children's voices rose and fell, in some game Abigail couldn't identify. Peace. This was what peace felt like. The mare went into labor that night, just as Caleb had predicted. Abigail woke to find him already gone from their bed, a lantern bobbing toward the barn. She pulled on a robe and followed. Trouble. Not yet, but she's starting. Could be a few hours. Abigail settled in to wait. Lucas appeared shortly after then, Molly both rubbing sleep from their eyes. Can we watch? Lucas asked. Stay back and stay quiet. Horses get nervous with too many people around. They huddled together in the corner, a family keeping vigil. The mare labored hard, her sides heaving. Caleb spoke to her softly, his hands gentle and sure. An hour passed. Then 2. Something's wrong, Caleb said quietly. Foals turned the wrong way. Abigail's heart clenched. What do we do? I have to reach in and turn it. Hold her head. Keep her calm. Abigail moved to the mare's head, stroking her nose, murmuring nonsense words of comfort. Caleb worked with grim determination, his scarred hand disappearing into the birth canal. Pa. Lucas's voice was small. Is the baby going to die? Not if I can help it. Minutes stretched into eternity. The mare screamed a sound that made Molly cry and Lucas go pale. Abigail kept stroking, kept talking, kept praying. Then Caleb pulled, and a wet mass of legs and head tumbled onto the straw. She's breathing, he said, wonder in his voice. She's breathing. The foal was tiny and perfect, struggling to stand on legs that didn't quite work yet. The mare turned to lick her baby, maternal instinct, overriding exhaustion. A filly, Caleb said. Healthy, strong. Molly pushed forward, tears forgotten. She's beautiful. What should we name her? Lucas asked. Everyone looked at Abigail. She thought for a moment, watching the newborn find her feet for the first time. Hope, she said. Let's call her Hope. Caleb nodded slowly. Hope it is. They stayed until dawn, watching Hope nurse and stumble and grow stronger by the minute. When they finally returned to the house, exhausted but happy, Abigail felt something shift inside her. New beginnings. They were all around her if she just had eyes to see them. The letter about the inheritance required a trip to Cheyenne. Caleb insisted on coming, which meant the children came too, their first real journey beyond Bitter Creek. The territorial capital overwhelmed them all. Molly pressed her face to the stagecoach window, counting buildings. Lucas pretended indifference, but couldn't stop staring at the crowds. It's so big, Molly whispered. It's just a town, Lucas said. We have towns. Not like this. The lawyer's office was on a street lined with brick buildings and gas lamps. Abigail had dressed in her best clothes, but she still felt out of place among the well-dressed city folk. The lawyer, a Mr. Henderson, was surprisingly kind. He walked her through the documents, explained the legal process, answered her questions patiently. Your claim is solid, Mrs. Morrison. Samuel Thorne was entitled to 1/3 of the family estate. With Warren's conviction virtually certain, the court is prepared to release those funds to you as Samuel's widow and sole heir. How much exactly? Henderson named a figure that made Abigail's head spin. That's more than I... It's substantial, yes. The Thorne family accumulated considerable wealth through their cattle and railroad investments. Your husband's share alone exceeds most fortunes in the territory. Caleb squeezed her hand. What are our options? You can take a lump sum, invest it through our firm, or establish a trust for specific purposes. Many widows in your position choose to— A school, Abigail interrupted. I want to build a school, in Bitter Creek, a proper one with trained teachers and books and supplies. Henderson blinked. That's an unusual request. Can it be done? Of course. We can establish an educational trust, hire administrators, purchase land. It would be a substantial undertaking, but certainly possible with these resources. Then that's what I want. Use whatever it takes to build the best school in Wyoming Territory. The rest can go into trust for my children's future. Henderson made notes, nodding. Very generous, Mrs. Morrison. Very generous indeed. As they left the office, Caleb was quiet. Abigail waited. You just gave away a fortune, he finally said. I gave it a purpose. There's a difference. Most people would have kept it, built a mansion, bought fancy clothes, lived like kings. I'm not most people. She smiled at him. Besides, I already have everything I need. A home, a family, love. What more could money buy? Security, comfort, ease. I've had ease. When I lived in Boston before Samuel, my family had ease. It didn't make us happy. She stopped walking, turning to face him. I know what makes me happy, Caleb. You, the children, our life. Everything else is just extra. He kissed her, then right there on the busy Cheyenne street, not caring who saw. I married the right woman, he said when they parted. Took you long enough to figure that out. They returned to Bitter Creek. 3 days later, plans in motion for the school that would bear Samuel's name. The Thorne Memorial Academy, dedicated to the memory of a man who deserved better than he got, and a woman who refused to let his legacy die. Summer arrived in full force, turning the prairie gold and green. The ranch flourished under their combined attention. Caleb worked the fields. Abigail managed the household and oversaw construction plans for the school. The children grew taller, braver, more confident with each passing day. On a hot July evening, Lucas came to Abigail with something in his hands. I made this for you, he said, holding out a small carved figure. It was a woman, roughly shaped but recognizable. She stood with arms open, welcoming. Lucas, this is beautiful. It's you, welcoming us home. The boy's face reddened. I know it's not perfect. I'm still learning. But I wanted you to have something. To say thank you. Thank you for what? For not giving up. On Pa. On Molly. On me. He looked down at his feet. I was so mean to you when you first came. I wanted you to leave. I thought if you left, things would go back to normal. But normal was awful. Normal was Pa drinking and Molly not talking, and me pretending everything was fine when nothing was fine at all. Lucas, you changed everything. Made Pa smile again. Made Molly brave. Made me feel like maybe it was okay to hope for things. To want things. To believe that good stuff could happen even after bad stuff. Abigail knelt, pulling him into a hug. You changed things too. Standing up to Warren like that, getting those documents from Billy, calling me Ma when it mattered most. You're the bravest boy I know. I learned from watching you. And I learned from watching you. We're quite a pair. He pulled back, wiping his eyes with embarrassed quickness. Don't tell Pa I cried. Your secret's safe with me. That night, Abigail placed the carved figure on the mantel above the fireplace next to Catherine's photograph. Two women who had loved this family in different ways at different times. Not replacing, adding. That's new, Caleb observed. Lucas made it. For me. Caleb studied the carving, then his son's empty chair. The boy had gone to bed early, exhausted from helping with the harvest. He's healing. We all are. Because of you. Because of us. All of us together. She moved to stand beside him, their shoulders touching. This family saved me, Caleb, just as much as I saved it. I don't think that's true. It is. Before you pulled me out of that blizzard, I was dying inside, even before the cold got me. I'd given up. Accepted that my life was over, that Warren had won, that nothing would ever be good again. She took his hand. You gave me a reason to fight. Your children gave me something to fight for. This home, this life, it's not just shelter, it's resurrection. Caleb was quiet for a long moment. Then, I felt the same way. After Catherine died. Like I was just going through the motions, waiting for death to catch up. The kids needed me, so I kept moving, but there was nothing inside, just empty space where my heart used to be. And now the space is full again, different than before, not better or worse, just different. New love alongside old love. New hope alongside old grief. Is that okay, having both? I think it's the only way to survive. You don't replace what you lost. You build around it, make room for more. Abigail rested her head on his shoulder. Catherine would have liked me, I think. She would have loved you. You're everything she wanted for us. Someone strong, someone brave, someone who wouldn't let grief win. Tell me about her. Something I don't know. Caleb thought for a moment. She sang, all the time about everything. Made up songs about the chickens, about the weather, about Lucas's tantrums. Drove me crazy sometimes, but the house felt so quiet after she was gone. I could sing more, if you want. I'd like that. They stood together as the fire burned low, two people who had found each other through chance and desperation and discovered something precious in the wreckage. Not a fairy tale ending. Better, a real one. Fall brought the school's groundbreaking ceremony. Half of Bitter Creek turned out to watch Abigail turn the first shovel of earth. Children who would someday study there gathered around, eyes wide with wonder. This school is dedicated to Samuel Thorne, Abigail announced, her voice carrying across the crowd. A man who believed in kindness over cruelty, in love over ambition. He didn't live to see his dreams fulfilled, but his legacy will touch generations of children who learn within these walls. She paused, finding Caleb's face in the crowd. He stood with Lucas and Molly, pride evident in every line of his body. This school is also dedicated to second chances, to the belief that it's never too late to start over, to rebuild, to become who you were meant to be. No matter where you come from, no matter what you've lost, no matter how dark your past, there is always hope. There is always possibility. There is always tomorrow. She drove the shovel into the ground and the crowd cheered. Afterward, Lucas approached her with a question in his eyes. Ma, what happens when the school is done? Will you go there to teach? Would you mind if I did? No, I think you'd be good at it. You're patient and you explain things so they make sense, and you don't get mad when people make mistakes. Then yes, I'll teach there. History and literature probably. Maybe help with the younger children's reading. Will you still be our ma, even with all those other kids to teach? Abigail knelt to his level. Lucas Morrison, you could fill that school with 1,000 students, and you would still be my son, my first son. My brave, smart, stubborn, wonderful son, who gave me a family when I had nothing. No amount of other children will ever change that. Promise? Cross my heart. He hugged her fiercely the way he rarely did in public. When he pulled back, his eyes were wet, but his smile was real. I love you, Ma. I love you too, Lucas, more than I can ever say. Winter came again, but this year it felt different. The ranch was warm and well supplied. The children were healthy and happy. Caleb and Abigail had settled into a rhythm that felt as natural as breathing. On Christmas Eve, they gathered around the fireplace, all four of them, plus Hope the filly, peering through the barn window whenever they passed. I want to give thanks, Abigail said, for this family, for this home, for the year we've had. For Ma, Molly added, for finding us. For Pa standing up to Warren, Lucas continued. Even when it was scary. Caleb looked at his family, his eyes bright. For second chances, and for the courage to take them. They sat together as the fire crackled, snow falling softly outside, peace settling over them like a blessing. Abigail thought back to the woman she'd been a year ago. Starving, freezing, crawling through a blizzard with nothing but her marriage certificate and her stubborn refusal to die. She'd whispered mercy to a stranger expecting nothing, and that stranger had given her everything. "What are you thinking about?" Caleb asked softly. "The night you found me. How different everything could have been if you'd left me there." "I couldn't have, even if I'd wanted to." "Why not?" "Because Catherine's last words to me were, 'Don't close your heart, Caleb. Promise me.' I'd been closed off for 3 years, keeping that promise by a thread. Then I saw you in the snow, and I knew if I walked away, I'd be breaking my promise forever, closing my heart for good." "So you saved me to save yourself." "Maybe. Or maybe we saved each other." He pulled her close. "Does it matter anymore?" "No," she admitted. "It doesn't." Molly climbed into Abigail's lap, drowsy from the fire's warmth. Lucas leaned against his father's shoulder, fighting sleep. Outside, the world lay white and quiet, a blank page waiting to be written. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new joys, new chances to build the life they'd fought so hard to claim. The school would open in spring. The ranch would grow. The children would become who they were meant to be. But tonight, in this moment, everything was exactly as it should be. Caleb pressed a kiss to Abigail's hair. "Happy Christmas, Mrs. Morrison." "Happy Christmas, Mr. Morrison." And as the fire burned low and the children drifted off to sleep, Abigail finally understood what she'd been searching for her whole life. Not safety, not security, not even love exactly. Home. She had found her home, not in a building or a piece of land, but in these 3 people who had become her whole world. In the man who had pulled her from the snow. In the children who had learned to call her mother. In the family they had built together from grief and hope and stubborn refusal to give up. This was her place, her people, her purpose. And nothing, not blizzards, not corrupt judges, not powerful men with dark intentions, would ever take it from her again. Some storms destroy, some storms transform, and sometimes if you're brave enough to keep walking through the cold and the fear and the darkness, you find exactly what you were looking for on the other side. Abigail closed her eyes, held her family close, and smiled. She had walked through the storm, and she had come home.